Internet! So, as you may or may not be able to tell, based on my general essence as a human, I'm not a doctor, and neither is my mom, although she can do anything, because she's amazing, because she's my mom. That being said, despite what I like to think about myself, my word is not golden. Everything you're about to hear is based on personal experiences from the past, and if having ADHD has taught me anything, it's that everyone's brains work differently. So please make sure to always check in with your doctor. Also, always check in with the doctor, because he's really cool. Okay, but the word vomiting that is about to ensue should be helpful in some way to you, I hope. But I guess there's only one way to find out. Nailed it! Boom! Woo! So long! A couple of people have asked about cross issues with ADHD, because I have mentioned in the past that I have some. One was, are other things you've already mentioned cross issues which can come with ADHD, or are they just a mud of bad luck in you? I've seen a bit of talk about how there are some symptom overlaps and similarities between ADHD and autism spectrum disorders. Do you have any info or comments on that? So without going too personal with me, in addition to having ADHD, I have depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Obviously the PTSD has nothing to do with my ADHD. However, it has exasperated some of the symptoms. And then anxiety and depression, unfortunately, are far more common in people with ADHD. It doesn't mean that you're going to be depressed if you have ADHD, and it doesn't mean you're going to have an anxiety disorder if you have ADHD, but you're more likely to. So the numbers are all over the place, but one of the statistics I read was that adults with ADHD are about 2.7 times more likely than the general population to be diagnosed with depression. I don't have a number, but it is more common for a person with ADHD to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. So from my personal experience and from some of the things that I've read, it's actually even more common for women with ADHD to experience anxiety and depression. And a lot of that has to do with how we're socialized. Most women, I'm one of the lucky ones, most women who do have ADHD are diagnosed much later in life, either in college or even after college. The way we're socialized, women are supposed to be more internalized. It's just the way that our society is. So we tend to internalize our failures and immediately blame ourselves. There's no external factors. And it's kind of this balling up and piling on of more and more issues to cause anxiety and depression and all this other kind of stuff. And then those things get in the way of the ADHD diagnosis. And so it's really interesting because ADHD does tend to present itself differently in women than in men, or in boys than in girls. But not always, because especially as a child, I had a far more male type of ADHD. Now, as an adult, I actually kind of have calmed, not entirely. If you ask my mom, I have not calmed down at all, but calmed down somewhat in the physical aspects of it, and it's a lot more internalized and inattentive in my head rather than inattentive in my body. Sometimes having anxiety and having depression, in addition to having ADHD, can be... what's the word I'm looking for? I think all of these particular differences, all these particular diagnoses, whatever you want to call them, tend to cause us to pile in on ourselves. So we blame more and more on ourselves because they're all very internalized issues. And a lot of times when you're depressed, you know that you shouldn't feel that way, but it doesn't stop you from feeling it. And when you're anxious, you know you're being stupid, but it doesn't stop you from not wanting to talk to anyone. And when you have ADHD, you know you should be able to focus, but you can't. And I think that's one of the hardest things about having ADHD or anxiety or depression, is that you know what you're supposed to be like, but that doesn't stop your brain from working the way that it does. And I think accepting that your brain is different and accepting that your brain is working the way that it's supposed to, because it's your brain and your brain is working perfectly fine for how you as a person are supposed to work, kind of helps you change your perspective on it, because you're not gonna just think away depression, anxiety, or ADHD, but you can definitely try to put a different spin on it. And that's not easy, but it's one of the few things that it takes time, but it does prove helpful. Also, the other part of this was the overlap with autism spectrum disorder. As the disclaimer has said, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor. I have worked with kids with autism before, and I very recently identified certain things that I didn't realize. I have no diagnosis of sensory processing disorder, like I don't have an official diagnosis of that, but I know from my experience and from what I've read and from what I know that I definitely exhibit symptoms of that, which is why I made my video about my weighted blanket. When I'm overwhelmed, having that on me is very helpful to me. I am sensitive to certain sounds. I am sensitive to certain smells. Smells are very, very difficult for me at times. I know that I definitely have issues with certain external stimuli because it can throw my whole thought process off, is kind of what I figured out. I think that there is definitely overlap in certain areas, but I also think that all of these different things are very distinguished, and even if there is overlap, it's just evidence that brains aren't supposed to work one way and that brains work all different ways. There's all sorts of kinds of things that can come along to the party with ADHD, but I think that enough people have experienced all of them at once that is evidence enough that it's doable, I guess. Does that make sense? Wow, that was super funny, or interesting, or insightful, or wow, me and mom, thank you for sharing that information. So I noticed that none of these Q&A sessions seem to have endpoints in when we're answering questions. So here's our endpoint. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Please hit that like button if you liked it. Hit that subscribe button if you really liked it. The rest of this month is going to be a lot of Q&A videos as much as possible. So yay! Just a guided tour around this end slate too. We've got last video, next video, and the playlist with all the videos in it. Also all of my social media. Cute little Santa hats on it. And Elsa! So that's cool. Thank you for watching again. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Yes, this is the same for every video. Maybe I'll change it eventually. I forget where I was going with this, you guys. I should have outlined this.